I'm always intrigued to hear of alternatives to the high input synthetic fertilizer market.
In the South Dakota State study, they just grew up some corn in pots. They did a few more fertilizers, but they just showed the top 3. The dirt grew 88 bushel corn in the greenhouse, some manure and compost, and it grew 187 bushel corn. The urea grew 214 bushel corn, and the wool pellets grew 244 bushel corn in the greenhouse.
And when this can take what is essentially a waste product and turn it into something that is beneficial for farmers, I'm very excited.
We're trying to create a market so we can get the farmer something for his wool ultimately is my goal, is because the farmer's been producing this, and unless he's got good Rambouillet merino wool, no one wants it. And so the coarser wools, these other wools that have debris in them, there's no demand for it. And so if we can make this pellet, find markets for this, then I can pay something to the farmer for his wool, and then I don't have to maybe shear as long as my dad did.
All that and more on this episode 497 of the Working Cows podcast, brought to you by Kaizen Solutions and Sunshine Bible Academy.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. It's Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows podcast. Very excited to be joined today by Israel Vasek. Israel is a pastor and a sheep shearer in central South Dakota, and he is working there to take sheep wool from the shearing and turn it into something that is beneficial for soil health. And I've heard from people all over the country, really, that have emailed me and say, hey, what are you doing with your wool? Well, I live in an area where wool is relatively easy to get into the market. It's easy to find people that will shear. It's easy to find a place to go with it because we have a great wool market in Belfouche, South Dakota, not very far from our house. And so it's easy for us. But I know some people that are they're burning it. They're just not using it. And Israel has found a way to turn that product that is not being used, especially as you go into wetter environments or you get into crossbred sheep where the wool is less and less desirable from a quality perspective. He's found a way to make it useful for a broad range of people, from gardeners on up to large-scale farmers. And that's what we're going to talk to him today about, is how is he doing that? So here's my conversation with Israel Vasek. Israel, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows podcast.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. A mutual friend connected us. I pastor the church that his in-laws attend, and he said, you got to talk to this guy and about what he's doing with wool pellets. So yeah, kind of maybe just set the context a little bit about what a wool pellet is, and then we'll talk about how you got into making them.
Okay. Yeah, so basically what it is we take the wool and we shred it, run it through a shredder to break down the fiber. And then there's a pellet mill, just kind of like along the same lines as a feed pellet mill, only it's a little bit different. It's more like the ones they use to make wood pellets, because the technical thing, the die doesn't turn. The die turns in the feed mill of a feed pellet mill, but the rollers turn in the mill of a wood pelleter. And so we just run it through that mill and get that compressed into a pellet. Looks just pretty much like a feed pellet, and you just put it in the ground and with your plants, or you can put it in the ground just to increase the soil health, because you're putting an organic natural matter 50% carbon product into the soil so that it can get in the soil to give nutrients to everything that the microorganisms and everything that the plant needs to grow healthier.
Yeah, very good. It's everything, especially in our context. I suppose in most contexts, really, the game is more carbon. So to be able to put something in there that's 50% carbon, that's good. So how did you get started making them?
Well, about 2 years ago, a guy that was attending our church, he's an avid gardener, and he started reading about how they've been doing this in Europe for quite a few years, it seems like, and, it had just probably been in the States about 5 years of what he could see, so, um, just said he just started doing more and more research and asking what we did with all the wool, and I said, "Well, my dad buys for a company out of Illinois, and but right now the market is a lot of people are just storing it because it's not worth anything, so they're storing it to wait for it to go up, and some people just throw it away just because there's no market for it." And so he said, "You need to look at this," and so I started looking at it, and he started basically calling all these contacts that he had all over the nation and saying, "Hey, this guy wants to try it. This guy wants to try it." And I'm like, "We don't even have a product to offer these people." So about March of 2024, I ordered the machines, and it took me almost 9 months to get the machine. So actually, January 1st of last year, I made my first pellets, and so we've been making pellets pretty much since February, as they needed it. Now the demand's kinda gone up here as we're getting into 2026, so.
Hmm. And what are you, yeah, kind of what is the capacity? What can you make? How many can you make? And then, yeah, what's the demand been like?
Right now, we're actually looking at buying another pelleter just because we've got a pretty big backlog right now. I mean, we could get through it, but we're in our busy season of shearing, so my sons have been the ones main guys making the pellets, and so right now we're shearing 4 days a week plus, 4 days a week, and so there's not a lot of time to make pellets. My wife's been making pellets as she's had time, and so we can do right now it's about 25 to 30 pounds an hour is what we can put out, and so it's pretty slow going process. I talked to a gentleman in Wisconsin about getting another pellet mill, and he's just saying, "Yeah, wool is a different animal when it comes to pelleting it just because of the makeup of the fiber," and whereas he says where a machine says they can put out 250 pounds an hour, he said, "If you're doing wool, you're lucky to get 50 pounds an hour." So
Hmm.
and so that's where we're getting to the point where we probably need to get another pelleter so we meet the demands of some of our we're having a few more farmers wanting their wool turned into pellets, and so that's what we're trying to get accomplished now.
How big are the pellets once they're made?
It's like a 6 millimeter. It looks just like an alfalfa pellet. It's not very big, maybe a tad bigger than a seed corn. It's not much bigger than that. So your alfalfa pellet, that's what it looks like. I think it's 6 millimeter. It's a quarter of an inch,
Okay,
and then it makes them. There's little different sizes. It cuts them off at different sizes, but they're usually pretty small.
sure. And how are people applying them when they go to put them on a field?
Well, that's the thing. We're just getting into that right now. We did a study with SDSU this last spring or winter into the summer, and they did it in the greenhouse, and they just applied it to the top of the soil in their buckets when they did it in the greenhouse. And so we're trying to figure out some different things for field application. You can always broadcast it, I'm sure, but then the question is how much per acre, and that's kind of what we're trying to find out now. I've got a farmer in Mount Vernon. He wants to strip till it in, and we're going to try and put it. He's going to try and put it through a strip tiller. He thinks he can put it in. We want to do about 20 acres. That's what he wants to do. We were trying to get a field study grant with South Dakota State to do a field study, but there was no funding for that. So this farmer said, "I'll work with you, and we'll get it. I'll get my wool turned into pellets, and we'll do a field study, and then hopefully we can keep SDSU involved in that, so we can get some of those findings published in that process." So.
Sure. And what's kind of what are the benefits being provided by the wool pellets? What are they doing in the
Well,
soil that's helpful?
okay. Well, the wool is a when they advertise it, a lot of times, like I said, I'm a sheep shearer. I don't know a lot about farming. I don't know a lot about I've been learning a lot of this stuff. Well, wool is a 902 nitrogen, nine nitrogen, 0 phosphorus, and 2 potassium. And so, and those numbers vary based on the time that the wool's breaking down, because the nitrogen is released as the wool is breaking down in the soil. And so that's the kind of it's a 6-month slow release nitrogen is what it is. But it's also that 50% carbon that's getting the organic matter into the soil that helps the health of helps make our soil healthier. Because most of the fertilizers that we use right now, they give some nutrition to the plant, but they don't do anything for our soils. I was listening to one of your podcasts, Brian Doherty from uh, where's he
Understanding
from
Ag.
again? Understanding Ag, and he was talking about, we can put things in the soil that give the plant nutrition, but there's always it doesn't always benefit the soil. It benefits the plant for a time, but then after a while it doesn't make healthy plants. It makes kind of dependent on that nutrition that you're putting in there that they're only gonna have for 2 or 3 weeks, whereas the wool, it's a slower amount of nitrogen. Instead of a 4600, it's a 902, but it's over a 6-month process as that wool is breaking down, and so you have something there that's gonna not only give some nutrition to the plant, but it's gonna help build that soil up. And then in that process too, it's also gonna feed those microorganisms that are there that have to break down all the organic matter to give nutrients to the plant as well. And so that's what that's the benefits we're seeing from it. Most of it's been in a garden sense, but it's all plant health. So, and with the South Dakota State study, we saw great results over the urea and the other products that were used in their greenhouse study.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Kaizen Solutions. What if 2026 looks exactly like 2025? Same stress, same pressure, same feeling that you're working harder but not getting ahead. Not because you're lazy, not because you're broken, but because you're running on the same internal programming. You want a better business and ultimately a better life. At Kaizen, we believe your first and best investment should always be in you, the owner, the manager, the leader. Your results don't come from effort, they come from identity. That's why we created the 100X Breakthrough Program. We don't hype you up, we don't throw motivation at you. We help you reprogram the way you think, feel, and show up so your actions and results finally change and align with what you truly want: a better business and a better life. If you're driven, if you know you're capable of more, and you're tired of repeating the same year on a faster treadmill, we focus on the foundation. It's time for a breakthrough. Visit kznsolutions.ca and schedule your free instant impact coaching session. Because your next level doesn't start with doing more, it starts with becoming more. Yeah, we'll talk about those results here in a minute, but kind of what you're talking about there, one of the problems with the nitrogen as it's applied now in most contexts is that nitrogen will consume carbon, and that compounds, leads to a compounding and cascading negative effect of where we already are short on carbon in most agricultural systems, and then we apply nitrogen, which causes the plant to consume more carbon, and thus we're now shorter than we were before on
Right.
carbon. And so it becomes, that's one of the reasons why we always need a bigger hit of nitrogen to accomplish the same results over
Right.
time.
Yeah.
As our nitrogen, or as our carbon becomes depleted, we need more nitrogen. So this is kind of a sweet spot of an opportunity where it's releasing nitrogen slowly, but also providing a lot of carbon, right?
Right. And that's what yeah, that's the benefit of it that that people are seeing. And because it's just, most farmers have gotten into the habit of just, hey, what do I need to get 200 bushel corn? Well, I need to put this much urea on, or this much potash or whatever to get my soil to where it's supposed to be. And we're just looking for an outcome based on bushels per acre, not based on what's good for our soil.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And what have been kind of, you've had some tests on small scales. What have been some of the results?
Well, in the South Dakota State study, they just grew up some corn in potted plant in pots, and they applied. Well, I have a study here that they show the top two. They did a few more fertilizers, but they just showed the top three. And they took some dirt from a field up there by Brookings, and they tested it for all the nutrients were the same throughout the soil. And the dirt grew 88 bushel corn in the greenhouse. There was um, some manure and compost in one of the fertilizers, and it grew 187 bushel corn. The urea grew 214 bushel corn, and the wool pellets grew 244 bushel corn in the greenhouse. And so I think the studies were based on they were a potential yield of 250 bushels to the acre is what they were looking for. And so the wool didn't quite reach that, but it outperformed all the other fertilizers in the greenhouse. So basically, the only thing that was varied in there was the types of fertilizer. So,
Yeah, that had to be pretty exciting results, right?
well, yeah, and I was pretty amazed. And you know what? When they were going to do the study, I was thinking they were going to incorporate the wool into the soil, and as I was reading the professor up there, Dr. Lin Wei at South Dakota State, he he gave me a pamphlet of just like a little spec sheet of the results of all the tests, and I started reading it, and I was like, they just spread it on top of the soil, so they didn't incorporate it into the soil or anything. They just dropped it on top, and it was just amazing. So he was really excited. He was really wanting to get to do that field study, but there was just no funding. But I have that farmer, and the farmer that he does a lot of custom planning and custom combining, and he said, "Well, I'm going to try that." He said he's done some work with South Dakota State with their seed department, so he's going to try. We're going to try and keep everybody in the loop together so we can kind of get all this stuff published here at the end of the fall this next year. And so we're looking forward to that process as well.
From your perspective, what are the best practices when it comes to, how to apply it, how to put it down, how to get it out on the field?
It kind of depends on how you're wanting to for the application. When we're looking at the wool pellets, we can look at it as strictly a fertilizer, or we can look at it as a soil amendment. So like in the garden at the place where we're making the pellets, we planted a garden out there, and actually the friend that connected us, he lived there for like the last 7 years, and he said, "I put manure on that thing about every 3rd year," and he said, "It's about time due for some more manure because it's not doing very good." And so before we planted anything, I just broadcast about 10 pounds on this 250 square foot patch, and I just tilled that in, and I was considering that the buildup of the soil. I wanted to get that organic matter into the soil, but then when I came back and planted my plants, we did a little bit in the row with it. So it all depends on how you're wanting to do it. If you're wanting to use it as a soil amendment to help build up your soil, or if you're wanting it to use it as the fertilizer. But right now, the best play we've seen is broadcasting. Of course, we have it this farmer up over Mount Vernon, he's the first one that's gonna try and strip till some in. And so I'm excited about that because to make this, what do you say, economical for the farmers, you're gonna have to find out it's gonna have to be around 40 or 50 pounds to the acre to make it economical, just at the cost of what it costs to make the pellet. And so I think if he's gonna strip till it in, if he can strip till it in and then come back and plant right on top of that pellet, then he's going to have all that carbon, all that nitrogen. He's going to have the water retention there at the root of the plant as it grows. So I'm excited about that. But other than that, we've just seen a broadcast application is mostly the way people put it on.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Sunshine Bible Academy.
My name is Denver Paul, and I'm a staff member and alumni at Sunshine Bible Academy. Through my time at SBA, God has done a tremendous amount of work in my life, and He's used the school to strengthen me and challenge me in my relationship with Jesus Christ. When I first came to Sunshine, I was a quiet, shy freshman who had been homeschooled up to that point. By the time I graduated, I was much more confident in who I was as a believer in Jesus. I was equipped to navigate life through a confusing world with Jesus as my captain and my Bible as my compass. I came to SBA mostly because I wanted to play football. And while being able to participate in athletics was great, I had many more opportunities and experiences that were much more valuable. I built many great friendships with Christians from all around the world. I got a lot of solid Bible teaching and was able to take music, FFA, and industrial arts classes. All in all, SBA has played a big part in making me the man that I am today.
Yeah, and you mentioned the economics of it. Let's talk about that. Kind of what does it cost per acre, and then kind of what is the point of diminishing returns as far as application pounds per acre and boost in the yield and all that.
Yeah, see, that those are questions that we're still trying to figure out because I haven't really seen any big studies on a field application like this. So this is all kind of new territory. That's why I'm trying to a lot of the like when a farmer's asking me to make his wool into pellets, I'm charging him about $3 a pound right now. And so you start looking at that and someone putting that on their farm ground, if they got to put 60 pounds to the acre on, well, that's $180 an acre. And so what are you going to spend on your fertilizer? What does that replace? And your fertilizer costs could be anywhere from $150 to $200 depending on or $100 to $200 depending on how much you're putting on and what you're putting on. And so what I'm hoping is the numbers between 50 and 60 pounds is something that we can get that will make it comparable to the things that the farmer is already using. But you're not only you're doing it's so much more than just replacing your urea. You're getting so much more out of the pellet than you are just synthetic fertilizer. So that's the hope, and that's what we're trying to figure out with some of these studies.
Sure. Yeah. Very good. Are you aware of, beyond, you said, they've been doing this in Europe for 30 years or so. Are you aware of any of the history of wool on using wool kind of in this way in a farming practice or a soil amendment or putting it on gardens or anything like that?
I do a sheep shearing school in Oklahoma, and I know that lady has used it as compost on her gardens for years. So it shows she's seen the benefits of it. And the thing is, anybody can take a wool fleece from their sheep and use it on their garden or in those applications, and it does help a lot. But the thing that is, it takes so long for that wool to decompose. It'll take up to 3 years if you just lay it out on the ground and then put some compost over it, or mulch over it. It'll take about 3 years to break down. But doing it into the pellet, making it into a pellet and running it through the shredder, we're breaking down that fiber, and then we're running it through the pellet mill, so we're breaking it down again. So we're getting that decomposition process started and incorporated into the soil so much faster. So I think people have been doing this for a long time in some of these settings. I don't know if they've been doing it on the farming side. It's been more the gardening side of things, but that's why we're trying to get into this farmer. We're trying to create a market so we can get the farmer something for his wool. Ultimately, is my goal. Is because the farmer's been producing this, and unless he's got good Rambouillet merino wool, Belle Fourche doesn't want. No one wants it. And so the coarser wools, these other wools that have debris in them,
Like Suffolks and all those. Yeah.
yeah, Suffolks and Hampshires and all those, even polypace, they don't have the quality of wool that the Merino and the Rambouillet do, and so that wool is just there's no demand for it. And so if we can make this pellet, find markets for this, then I can pay something to the farmer for his wool, and then I don't have to maybe shear as long as my dad did.
Yeah. Shearing is one of those things that you need to have an early exit strategy from. It'll keep you strong and in shape, but I think it's also kind of hard on the body too, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty hard on the body.
For sure. So, yeah, I guess have you thought about adding anything to it, or do you add anything to the wool, or is the wool pellet just straight wool when it comes out?
Right now, it's just straight wool. I mean, once in a while, if the wool is like really dry, that lady that I do my sheep shearing school at in Oklahoma, she sent up. I probably did 1,600 pounds of pellets for her this summer, and some of that wool was from like 2006, so it was dry. There was nothing, and so we had to put a little bit of spritz a little bit of water on that to get it to go through the pelleter. But pretty much, we don't add anything to it. Um, I did talk to one of the farmers I shear for, and he said, there could become a point where you're making these pellets and you can add, like something that the soil is lacking as well to incorporate that. But at this point, we're not doing anything like that. We're just taking the wool straight out of the bag, running it through the shredder, running it through the pellet mill, and then it comes out, and that's what you put in the ground with your plants.
Sure. A natural fit would be something like C90 Ocean Minerals and their soil amendments and stuff like that. And we should get you out to Rapid City for the Rogue Food Conference and get you introduced to Michael Sillick and the team there at C90 Ocean Minerals. That would seem like a natural fit to me.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot. I mean, I was listening to a couple of your other podcasts that you did. Christina Root was on with regenerative products and stuff,
yep.
like Regenified and stuff like that. And so I was like, wow, that that there's a market for what I'm doing. I mean, we did the state fair this year, and everybody's saying, "Hey, you need to go on Shark Tank. You need to do all this stuff." And I'm like, we don't have it. We can't make the thing fast enough right now to do something like that. And so I think the natural process of this thing growing the way it is good. And it's, but after we went to the state fair and people found out what we were doing, then the more farmers I get in call. I got Terry Ness. He sits on the South Dakota Soil Health Coalition board. He actually was going to try and come down today and get some pellets, but his truck wasn't working, so he's going to come down the end of the week after. They're doing a conference up at Aberdeen this week, and there's a lady up in Aberdeen that's making wool pellets. She just got her machines here a couple weeks ago, and so she's talking at the Soil Health Coalition. But yeah, so yeah, no, just going to the state fair and letting people know what we're doing has gotten our name out there and stuff like that, and that's created more business and actually more work for us. So
that's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah, it is a good problem to have.
So, yeah, very good. I'm excited to see where it goes and how it grows. And I guess to me, it kind of always everything comes back to the goodness of God, right? That He designs this system, and I think there's more to it, and it's better than we understand now. And there's more connections and things like this, where in your neighborhood, wool is almost a waste product. I hate to say it that way, but
yeah.
Almost, I know guys farther east of you in Missouri and stuff. They're like, we just burn our wool here. There's nothing that we can do with it. And again, the sheep wool tends to be better. The drier the climate, the wool gets better when it's drier. And so, you guys kind of got those things stacked against you. Even if you do have the right breeds, the wool still probably isn't going to be as fine as it is farther west in places like here, or even farther west than this, Wyoming and Idaho and some of those places that are known for sheep for those reasons too. So, but Now here's again in the providence of God and His design. There's this opportunity to use this product that isn't doing a lot for the farmer economically. Actually, in a lot of cases, it's a money loser where you got to pay somebody to shear it, and the fleece isn't worth what it costs to shear it. And here we have this opportunity to use it. That kind of speaks to me of the goodness of God.
Yeah, it definitely does. And so, yeah, that's just it's one of those things that God designed it, and it took us a while to figure it out.
Yeah. And I think there's, more to be discovered, right? It's the glory of God to conceal a thing. It's the glory of a king to search it out. That's in the Proverbs somewhere, and I think that's a good one to remember when we start to look into this soil health stuff.
Yeah.
That's part of those things that are concealed.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of where I was going with that question earlier about the history of wool on soil. Is I'm wondering if even like deep history, if this was something that was done in the past, in ancient cultures or anything like that, if you know of any of
Yeah,
that.
I don't really know of any. I've never searched anything out, but I'm sure there was something to it. It tends to we tend to forget about things, and we always design something that we think's easier or better, and it's usually not. So,
Yeah, well, and I think that there are just things that as we've become more mechanized in our approach to agriculture and more reliant on chemicals, there's probably things that we've forgotten along the way that used to be common practices. And I wouldn't be surprised to find out that this is one of them, at least in the just putting wool on the soil. Now the pelletization is new, but it's helpful because it does make that breakdown process faster, which is good. So
yeah. Yeah.
what
Yeah,
what
no.
drew you? Go ahead.
No, I wasn't gonna yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what drew you to this?
Drew to this?
To
D
making wool pellets?
Well, when the guy that was going to our church, he talked to me about it, and he was just basically, I don't know, me and my wife prayed about it and said, "Is this something that we wanna do?" She said, "You're not gonna wanna shear sheep forever." And so, this is if this something work out, that kinda it kinda drew me as it's kind of an exit plan from shearing, but also it's the desire to do something for the farmer as well too. If I can, 'cause when we shear sheep, my dad has bought wool for, 25 years for a company and different companies, and really there's only, I think, company buying one major company outside of Belle Fourche and some of the other places, the auctions down south, but, uh, they don't give anything for the wool, and so the farmer hasn't gotten anything for his wool the last 6 years, and so, I was thinking if I can create a market for this, an outlet where we can the 150,000 pounds a year that my dad buys, if I can find markets for that, well, then I can start paying the farmer for his wool a decent price that he'll bring it to me, and then I don't have to shear as much. You know, the farmer, at a penny or 2 cents a pound, they can't drive anywhere to take the wool. That's why your friends guys down in Missouri, they're burning it. It's because it's a drain. And so if we can if I can make a market, if I can get rid of the wool pellets that we would shear in a year, then 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 I can give farmer something for his wool. I can, create an income for me and my family, and help the farmers out on the other end as well too, with helping their soil and all that stuff.
Yeah, do you think this will be something that will become more of a localized service? Like there will be a lot of people doing it small scale around, or what do you see the future? Like, are people going to haul it a certain number of miles? What would you say right now? It's like, it's probably not worth it to haul that many miles to get wool pellets.
I think people will haul it. I mean, I have people coming from DeSmit and Pierre, 2 or 3 hours away. I think it'll stay more localized. I know there's a guy in Utah that's been making pellets for about 5 years, and he can do quite a bit, but still, you're going all the way to Utah. I think There's a couple ladies in Wisconsin making pellets. There's a lady down in Nebraska making pellets. So I think it's gonna be kind of a localized thing, maybe 300, 400 miles radius. You'll have people doing this, and I know that it, it's not it it it's n- it's pretty time consuming to make the pellet. As far as from what we've found, just it's wool's a different animal when you're trying to push it through that pellet mill, and, if it's not just that's one thing we're finding with the pellet, it's gotta be the moisture content's gotta be between 11 and 15% moisture
Mm.
for it to go through that pellet mill. If it's too dry, it just powders it up. If it's, too wet, it just makes a mushy pellet, and it doesn't I mean, I'm sure it would work in the soil, but we kinda wanna keep a good pellet so that if a farmer wants to put it through a strip tiller or he wants to do it so that way we selling a more consistent product, and that it's not very I think we're gonna have to get more pelleters to put out more pounds per day so that we can meet the demands that we're looking at right now. And then we haven't even gotten to spring. I just I kinda, cringe to think about, all these people that we talked to at the fair. They said, "Yeah, I might bring my wool down and make some pellets," and we've heard from a few people, and we're really busy right now. Spring hits, and they're like, "Yeah, I might call that guy up," and I'm like, "Yeah, we're a little ways out on that."
Yeah. So what is the moisture content of wool generally? Is it usually kind of between that 11 and 15%, or is it tend to be
It all
drier or
depends on
wetter?
it depends on how much lanoline's in the wool. I know about 20 years ago, my dad tried to get a wool washing plant here in Geddes, and, when they washed wool in the big mills, they would dry it after they went and washed it down to 22% moisture, and that's how they would bag it. So it wasn't really, really dry. They wanted some moisture left in the wool, and so it all depends on how much lanoline's in that wool is really the major thing. Um, your your finer wooled sheep are gonna have probably the more moisture in the wool. The coarser wool sheep, they don't have as much moisture. It just the nature of it doesn't hold the moisture as much. So
So do you generally have to let it dry, or do you test it before you start running it through, or how do you?
well, we've we've kind of found a process of we try and let it set in the bags for a little while because 'cause it'll lose some of the lanolin, and so we kinda just sometimes when we're shearing, if someone wants us to make pellets, we'll say we can kinda tell if it's gonna be a good we started using a moisture tester, but we've kinda gone away from that just because it's not really accurate. I didn't probably have a very good moisture tester, but you can kinda tell just about like anything, you do something for a little while, you can start to tell, "Hey, this is a little dry, we need a little more moisture in it," but
Are you guys adding any moisture then before you run it through, or no?
no, just, if it's really dry, we'll spritz it we got a little sprayer. We'll spritz a
Mhm,
little water on it as it's going through the pellet mill, but other than that, no. Everything right now with our machines is all hand fed too, and so
mhm.
as we it'd be nice to get some conveyors and some stuff like that, but I was just trying to prove a concept, so I didn't wanna go spend every time you add something else, it's another 5 grand here, another 5 grand there, and it's like, I don't even know if this is gonna pan out, so I didn't wanna spend more than my $20,000 I spent on my machines and stuff like that, so
Yep. And what does the future look like? Do you think it's gonna be something that is gonna work?
I think it is. I think it is. I know definitely for gardeners, it's great. I mean, everybody who's used it in their gardens or their house plants and stuff like that, they love it. I had a lady at the fair come up to me and grab a bag of our pellets and said, "These things are amazing."
Mm,
And I said, "Well, who are you and where did you get our pellets?" She said, "Well, you shear for my son, and he gave me a bag of the pellets they bought from you." And I had a fern that it's been around on death's door for I don't know how long, and I put a little bit of the pellets in there, and it has never looked that way in its life, and
mm.
so, there's just something about what the wool does when it creates air in the soil and gives that slow release nitrogen, it does something. the plant people, garden and plant people love it. And so my thing is, I know we can sell to that group of people right now. It's that market's a little bit, I don't know. I just got to find like the bigger, like city areas where people have their raised flower beds and their gardens and that stuff. It'll help them, but I don't know if that's going to take all wool. If we can get it into the farming area, then there won't be enough wool in the country to do anything. And so,
yeah.
but
Well, and
then
then it drives the price of wool up. You know, I mean,
right,
at
then
that point, it can affect the price of wool.
Yeah, then it can affect the price of wool, yeah, too. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, you know, we're obviously dreaming here, but if we could, I mean, that's corn and soybeans, 180 million acres between them. So, you know,
yeah, there's not enough wool. Yeah, yeah, we'd have to start importing wool from someplace else then if people
right,
would.
right, or
But
more
then
people could run sheep. You know, that's
right,
always an
yeah,
option.
that's true. I mean, our numbers in the United States are down to like less than 5 million, and back they used to be 50 million. And
Right.
so years ago there were 50 million sheep in the United States. And so, you know, I don't know if we'd ever get back to that. I think all our land is turned into farm ground, you know, so we
Yeah.
can't really graze that many sheep, but
Yeah,
you know.
you're right for sure. And that, yeah, yep, that's very true. But you know, we're here chipping away at that at the Working
Yeah.
Cows podcast to get
Yes,
more
trying to get
land
more of
back
that
to
back.
grass and more livestock on crop acres too. You know, so most of that, you know, corn and soybeans, 120 days a year at best, it's photosynthesizing. Follow that with a cover crop, graze it with sheep or cows, take the wool from the sheep and turn them into pellets, and
Yeah.
you've got kind of a closed loop there that continues to add value to the crop ground if you can convince them of that. But
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing too. You're not going to convince everybody that this is for them. You're going to
Right.
always have those farmers who, this is how I've done it for years. I'm going to go and I'm going to put this on, and that's just the way we're going to do it. But for those people who want to get healthier soil, they want to do those things. I think this is a product that's going to help in, you know, break things up and not put so much of synthetics on our soil for the plants. So
Yep, for sure. Well, yeah, I'm all for it. I hope it catches on and takes off and helps you retire from shearing early and becomes a income stream for the family for generations. That'd be great.
That would be great.
So anything else you wanted to cover here today? Anything we left on the table here?
Not much that I know about, but yeah, just check us out, woollynaturals.com, or woollynaturals.com, 2 L's, WOOLLY naturals.com. There's some of the information out there. It's just a little website I got started for friends that were saying, hey, how do I get this stuff? And I'm on the other side of the country. And so I got a little e-store there. But other than that, my phone number and all my information is on that website. So if anybody wants to get in contact with me about making pellets or something like that, or just whatever, or buying pellets, I can do that. You can find my info there.
Very good. Yeah, we'll send people that direction in the show notes page for today. So, Israel, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks, Clay.
Very good stuff there with Israel. Really appreciate the work that he's doing, and I hope this catches on. I'd love to see this adopted more widely as an opportunity and a benefit for the conventional model, and maybe the first step into regenerative agriculture. So look forward to seeing where that ends up. Coming up next on the Working Cows podcast, very excited to welcome back Jay Young. Jay's a guy who's doing great things in Western Kansas on the soil health fronts, but we're going to talk to him about what he's been doing with grazing collars and the mind-blowing opportunities that he sees grazing collars creating for people in agriculture, specifically on the row crop side related to grazing on cover crops and integrating livestock onto farm ground. So very, very exciting stuff for me. Really looking forward to sharing this episode coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.